Am I the a-hole for using a fake test to expose my colorblind brother in front of friends and family? So, I, F17, have a brother, M15, who claims he's colorblind. When he was younger, all his paintings and drawings seemed normal. The whole colorblind claim started after he turned 10, all because of a light pink t-shirt he perceived as white. My parents joked about him being colorblind since my uncle, my dad's brother, is. He continued this claim, constantly mentioning it to others, which has always annoyed me because I'm sure he's lying. I've told my parents, but they brush me off, saying I'm just jealous of the attention he gets. Last week was my birthday. I had a gathering at home with about 25 to 30 people on the weekend. The topic of his supposed colorblindness came up again, with everyone asking him to identify colors. I, feeling frustrated, asked him to take an Ishihara test on the TV. He agreed after some hesitation. I went up to my room to grab my computer to plug to the TV. But instead of a genuine test, I used a fake Ishihara test, one that anyone could pass. He pretended not to see some numbers, and once the test concluded, I revealed to everyone that it was a fake test, aiming to show he was lying. The mood turned sour. My brother and parents were furious. My family tried to brush it off, making jokes, and my friends found it amusing. Post-party, my parents were livid. They labeled me as an attention seeker and a jealous asshole and grounded me for embarrassing my brother. I feel like had he been honest, he wouldn't have been humiliated. Am I the a-hole for not moving from a spot someone wanted to propose on? One of my hobbies is to go hiking and eat a very large meal while sitting down. Basically a picnic for myself. I bring a blanket and anything else I might need for an hour-long experience. This past Monday I was up at a new area I'd never been to. I brought my large meal with me and set up on a very gorgeous area with a great view of the lake. I was about 5 minutes into my ritual when this guy with a camera comes and tells me that a couple was coming up to do a proposal on this very spot and asked me to move. I told him no, that I barely got set up and I was in the middle of my meal. He gets annoyed and just asks again, but I tell him now. A few minutes later the photographer returns with the guy who was going to propose. The guy proposing asks me this time and I just tell him no, that he can wait. He asks me WTF is wrong with me and I just tell him that I am eating my meal. He starts telling me to GTFO, but I put on my headphones and just continue eating. After a while he leaves me alone. After I felt satisfied from the meal I packed up and was heading down. The three were waiting at another spot and the men point me out and the lady starts yelling at me that I ruined her day and that the proposal happened elsewhere instead of the spot I was in. I just smiled and said congrats on your proposal and kept walking. When I got back home this came up and I told my boyfriend about it. He straight up said it wasn't a whole thing to do. Am I the a-hole for informing a school a family with students have moved out of district in order to make room for my child? My children and I moved into a new school district last year. Although we live very close to a great school, we were sent to attend another school in the district because the desired school was at capacity. I was informed right before the school year that my 2 children were next to be enrolled. The housing issue has slowed movers down to a near halt and we aren't really living in an area with frequent movers anyway. I found out that a family moved out of our district to our inner city schools but was also informed the students were still attending the school in my district. I don't know the family, but I don't blame them. The inner city schools are terrible and problematic at best. However, our district is not open enrollment and they should no longer be attending the school. I called the principal and board of education to make a report and I was finally informed last week that my children will be attending our local school and I breathed a sigh of relief. They will start next week and this will be a huge burden lifted for our household. The issue comes from the family that needs to pull their children from school. They found out I made the call and informed me that while I was doing what's best for my child I was greatly harming all 4 of theirs. Apparently, one of their children is autistic and thriving with their school. Turns out, 3 of their kids attended the school I wanted but one of them attended a special school for autistic children. They said he was nonverbal, to now telling his mom I love you. I felt terrible when they said that but I also didn't make them move. They did that on their own. They have been telling people about it and of course they think I'm heartless. Some have said I'm an asshole, but I wanted to see if I mishandled it. Am I the a-hole for getting a hotel room for my spouse, me and my daughter instead of forcing her to share a bed with her cousins? I normally get along really well with my in-laws. My meal is awesome, Sills and Bills and everyone else are just great people. We were headed out their way to go spend some time before school starts again and it lined up with when 2 other families were coming into town. This meant that the bedrooms we'd normally stay in were packed, and while my husband and I had a room and a bed, our daughter, Cass, 8, didn't have a spot to herself. My Sil suggested that she just double up with her cousins as some of the cousins would share beds. Cass was not happy about this and did not want to. She was pretty adamant about it. She has never shared a bed with anyone, and I wasn't about to force her to. I figured that us leaving to get a hotel a few miles away would free up some space and make it easier on everyone. Everyone was really taken aback by this. They kept telling me that it didn't make sense, it was spending money when we didn't need to, and that it's fine for them to share beds. I said I know it's fine, but that Cass isn't comfortable with it, and I'm not going to force her. They kept pushing back saying that all girls share beds and more stuff about how girls are used to seeing each other changing. They kept emphasizing that it's normal and it's weird for us to be upset about it. They kept asking me why she was uncomfortable, and one of them even asked her in that way is meant to guilt them. Like, why does this make you uncomfortable? Don't you want to spend time with your cousins? We ended up getting the hotel room, but they brought it up every day and kept almost making fun of my daughter for not wanting to share a bed, indicating that she was weird and spoiled. I've never in my life shared a bed with anyone other than someone I'm being romantic with. Even as a little kid, I'd never have shared a bed either. I didn't change around other girls either except in gym class, where I'd generally change in the restroom because it felt really inappropriate. I didn't think this was super weird, but the entire family, women at least, made me feel like I was some kind of freak for not forcing my daughter into it. Am I the a-hole for arranging childcare far away from my wedding reception? I got married this summer. And while I wanted a child-free wedding, I realized that this would exclude a lot of my friends and family. So I came up with what I thought was a good compromise. I rented out my brother's indoor playground and paid the staff to work late. Basically, I paid them double time until midnight whether there were kids there or not. They are all trained in first aid and have all been screened by the police. On top of that, several of the older kids that didn't want to go to the reception stayed there as well to keep an eye on everything. As well as 2 ladies from my church. I also provided food and drinks. The problem is that the playground was about 2 miles away from the reception. So you basically had to choose between leaving your kids there or bringing them with you. I figured that it was a good option for anyone with kids that might get rowdy. Anyone with infants obviously wouldn't leave them there. Boy, was I wrong. People were mad that it was so far away. About a 5-minute drive. They were mad that the kids didn't get the same food as the people at the reception. No, they got pizza, nachos, and fried chicken. They were mad I didn't have someone to watch nursing babies. I was cool with people bringing babies to the reception. There was a mother's room at the hall for nursing and changing babies. I have been called all kinds of names for what I honestly thought was a nice thing. My husband said we should just have gone child-free and dealt with that hate instead of wasting money on ingrates. My aunt actually called me an asshole for not wanting a couple of dozen screaming and crying kids at the reception.